The original King Kong features some of the finest creature effects in film. One can easily get bogged down discussing the minute details of its monster scenes, and that's exactly what I intended to do. This video is the second part in an extensive review of King Kong, and will be wholly focused on the special effects sequences. Let's get started. Kong and the creatures of Skull Island were portrayed through the process of stop-motion animation, where a model is photographed in a sequence of poses which, when played together at a high frame rate, creates the illusion of movement. Behind King Kong's effects was the stop-motion pioneer Willis O'Brien and his team of animators and technicians. The special effects begin when the Venture arrives at Skull Island. The scene is shrouded in fog, and, for the first time since the opening titles, Max Steiner's musical score enters. It is a subtle piece, centered around an eerie harp, and perfectly establishes feelings of mystery and impending danger. Drums can be heard in the distance, coming from the island. Fade to the next day, the fog is cleared, and Skull Island is finally visible, rendered as a painting. It's a wonderful piece of art. I love its fine details. The wall, the village huts, the sandy beach, and the low hanging clouds. A few animated birds fly past. Birds appear constantly throughout this movie. They're entirely unnecessary to the story, but add life and movement and serve as a testament to how dedicated O'Brien and his team were to their craft. The characters board a rowboat and make landfall, and we get to see another painting of the island, this time from a much closer perspective, allowing for an even more imposing amount of detail. The music, guided by the islanders' drumming, builds as more birds fly past. Anne has been abducted and is being prepared for sacrifice. The mass of torch-wielding islanders dancing in front of the towering wall, while the powerful and almost frantic musical score plays, is already awe-inspiring, but the film's spectacle is only just beginning. The gate, the barrier between reality and fantasy, is slowly opened, revealing the pedestal Anne is to be sacrificed on. Tension mounts as she is led up to it and tied to its two pillars. Fairy looks as if she is about to cry. This expression, paired with the distorted arrangement of Anne's theme music, grounds the outlandish visuals in the terrifying reality of her situation. As the gate closes, we get the greatest, most stunning shot the film has shown us yet, but it is only moments away from being outdone. The music builds as the islanders climb the scaffolding leading to the top of the wall. Then we see this. The islander chief calls out, and all noise stops. The giant gong atop the wall is rung 8 times. A roar emits from the jungle ahead, and Kong makes his first appearance. Anne's placement in the shot allows the audience to immediately see how massive Kong is. He uproots the trees in his path. Then we see an unfortunate shot of the life-size Kong head. This prop serves a good purpose later on, but it's totally out of place here, as it looks nothing like the stop-motion model. Nevertheless, it is still impressive for 1933. Kong undoes the ropes binding Anne, showing his intelligence. The pillars of Anne's pedestal cast shadows on Kong, a small touch that helps blend the live-action footage of Fay Ray with the animation. He picks up Anne, who has seamlessly transformed into an animated doll, and bellows at his subjects before returning to the jungle. Carl Denham and the sailors swarm the village, and Jack Driscoll gets his first glimpse at Kong. Bruce Cabot's face in this scene is great. It's a comical yet entirely appropriate mixture of surprise, fear, and confusion. The sailors open the gate, and half of them pursue Kong while the others stand guard. Within Kong's first 2 minutes of screen time, we have already seen him convey an incredible range of expression and character. He's shown his animal brutality, snarling, roaring, and pounding his chest, but he's also displayed curiosity, amusement, and a little tenderness in his treatment of Anne. All the jungle scenes are filmed on sets. They don't look entirely convincing, but I think this works in the film's favor, as they closely match the miniature sets the stop-motion models use, preserving the appearance that the actors and monsters exist in the same world. Paintings are frequently combined with shots of the jungle sets, adding depth and atmosphere. The first stop-motion creature to appear is a Stegosaurus. It is introduced when the rescuers abruptly spot it in the distance in a nicely layered shot. There is a good building of suspense as the humans prepare for a confrontation and the dinosaur lumbers toward them. Upon spotting the humans, the stegosaur behaves much like a rhinoceros, charging on sight. A well-timed gas bomb from Denim and a volley of shots bring it down, and the humans approach, only for the beast to rush to its feet and swing its tail madly. Another bomb and more shots finish the job. Aside from a brief cutaway to Denim, this all happens in one take. Following this is a lengthy shot of Denim and Driscoll walking past the fallen dinosaur, which has aged poorly. Still, it gives us a good, clear look at the wonderful Stegosaur model. This scene teases the nature of what awaits the rescuers and demonstrates the power of the gas bombs. There is also a bit of tragedy. One can't help but feel sorry for the poor dinosaur that only had to die because of its inferior defense mechanisms. This neatly foreshadows Kong's fate. Also, there are more birds. As Denim and the sailors trail Kong, they find themselves blocked by a lake. Denim barks in order to build a raft, and after a slick transition, they set off across the fog-shrouded water. The mood is already uneasy when a large, serpentine head rises from the water, only to dip back down, unnoticed. The raft is close to shore when the creature pops out of the water again with an angry bellow, only a short distance from the intruders. The rifles are fired to no effect, and the creature sinks beneath the surface. There is a tense pause, then the raft is suddenly overturned as the monster rises from beneath it, showing a frightening and unexpected level of intelligence from this reptilian beast. What happens next, while tame by today's standards of violence, is a scene so horrific to 1930s audiences it was censored in later re-releases. The helpless men, with their weapons lost, swim to shore while the monster sadistically picks them one at a time out of the water, bites them to death, and hurls their corpses aside, like a cat toying with mice. The scene is only made more intense by the chaotic music and cutaway shots of screaming, panicking sailors. 8 make it to shore, only for the beast to reveal itself to be a brontosaurus, and a fast one too. With the common portrayal of these long-necked monsters being sluggish and upright, it's quite interesting to see one charging with its head angled forward, writhing like a snake. The brontosaur pursues the men uphill, and we see this epic, nightmarish image of the beast emerging from the fog in close pursuit of the men, who are now stop-motion miniatures. An unfortunate sailor who has fallen behind, and apparently never saw the thing chasing him, chooses to climb a dead tree. This only puts him at eye level with the brontosaur. We get an incredible close-up that shows the creature's face in detail, and highlights just how enormous it is. It snarls and nips at the sailor tauntingly, before finally grabbing him around the middle. In a brilliant use of sound design, all noise vanishes, apart from the man's screams, as he is pulled from the tree and shaken side to side. The music returns, almost acting as a sound effect, while the brontosaur mashes him into the ground. This scene is frequently made fun of for being scientifically inaccurate, depicting the plant-eating brontosaurus as a bloodthirsty carnivore. But I would argue this isn't necessarily the case. The brontosaur isn't shown eating anyone, only using its mouth to kill them. There are many examples of living herbivores that will become violent, even sadistic, killers when provoked. The rescuers, who could now use rescuing themselves, have evaded the brontosaur. Unfortunately for them, they have nearly succeeded in catching up with Kong. This shot is simply awesome. The tumult of the previous 2 dinosaur sequences is enough to make one forget about Kong, and this image jars him back into focus. He looks truly regal in this moment, and the deep, rising music only heightens this. No matter how incredible the creatures of Skull Island become, Kong always remains the most astounding. He arrives at a clearing, scares off a bird, and takes a moment to admire Anne. Cut back to the fleeing men. Denim falls behind when his sleeve is snagged on a branch. It's a minor but life-saving incident. Kong hears the commotion, growls, and sets Anne on a dead tree. And we see a startlingly smooth transition between the stop-motion doll and the living, breathing Fey Ray. There's another bird. The sailors, unknowingly following in Kong's footsteps, cross the log bridge, only for Kong to rush them from the other side. They panic and fall over each other, trying to get back across, as Kong furiously greets them. Driscoll keeps his head and, seeing the hopelessness of recrossing the bridge, finds a nearby vine and crawls down to a cave in the ravine wall. I would like to take a moment to appreciate the amount of movement packed into this one shot. On the right is a bridge with sailors, on the left is Driscoll climbing into the cave, and in the background is the approaching Kong. I talked some about this scene in part 1, so I leave my description of it simple. Music, editing, sound design, acting, and special effects synchronize harmoniously to illustrate Kong's terrible power. He dispatches the sailors and bellows at their pulverized bodies. Then, one of the more unnerving moments of the movie occurs. Kong goes quiet, and we see that, despite his primal rage, he has been fully aware of Driscoll's movements. He pretends to back off, only to dart his hand into the cave. Driscoll fights back with a knife. The mission to save Anne no longer belongs to a rescue party. It is entirely a personal conflict between him and Kong. A well-placed slash drives the hairy hand away. The injury seems to confuse Kong. He doesn't understand why a tiny human was able to hurt him. The orchestra's strings take over for a moment, bringing a little sympathy to the big ape in this glimpse of vulnerability. As if Jack isn't already having a bad day, this weird thing has noticed him and is using the vine that saved his life to climb up to the cave. Fortunately, he sees this in time to cut the vine and drop the thing to the ground. Unfortunately, Kong has recovered from the shock of the knife wound and resumed his attack. Whatever that lizard thing was, I love it. Since the other creatures in this film are at least closely based on some real animal, it adds a nice bit of variety to see something that is pure imagination. I also have to emphasize how remarkable this shot is. Managing a stop-motion camera pan, the two creature models, and the projected image of Bruce Cabot is a frighteningly complicated and difficult task for an animator. We've reached one of the greatest, most iconic scenes of the movie. While Kong has been disposing of the sailors, Anne has been stranded atop a dead tree. What seems to be a reprieve from her ordeal turns into a worse nightmare when a hungry T-Rex spots her. It stops to scratch its neck. I love how the animators took the extra time to add petty details such as this. They add life to the film. Kong hears Anne's screams, expends a few precious seconds to send a message to Driscoll, then races off to the clearing. The music builds as the Rex closes in on Anne, and Kong closes in on the Rex. Kong arrives in the nick of time, and the dinosaur seems startled by his appearance. The orchestra plays a piece of Kong's theme as the two giants stare each other down, then dies out. It will not return until the fight's end. Since the arrival at Skull Island, the musical score has gone almost entirely unbroken. Its sudden absence creates the feeling that one is watching a momentous occasion, which really is true. This is the first time the audience can unquestionably root for Kong. The lack of music also highlights the sounds of the fight. The growls and roars, the impact of strikes, and Anne's screams make for an atmosphere that is raw, animalistic, and brutal. I would argue this scene is the best monster fight in movie history for a multitude of reasons. Choreography and realism. The fight is energetic and dynamically choreographed. Many monster battles are disappointingly stiff or repetitive. Here, the movements of the creatures are fluid, and the way they fight evolves over the course of the scene, keeping it engaging. Additionally, a sense of realism is retained throughout. The creatures behave like actual animals, and don't break the laws of reality beyond what is necessary for the situation to happen. Characterization and strategy. Both combatants are characterized through the way they fight. The T-Rex is dumb and instinct-driven. All it does is bite and kick. There are points where Kong is left vulnerable, but the Rex does not act, because doing so would require initiative beyond its natural reflexes. Kong, on the other hand, demonstrates rapid problem-solving. He experiments with attacking the Rex in different ways. When something succeeds, he repeats it. For example, early in the fight, Kong manages to pin the Rex to the ground, but is kicked in the chest and knocked onto his back. The next time he gets his opponent down, he jumps out of the way of its feet, but this gives it time to stand. Kong eventually triumphs by finding a way to pull the Rex to the ground while positioning himself away from the feet. This strategic element distinguishes the fight from the average monster battle, which entails the combatants senselessly beating each other until one delivers a special power attack. Tension and the human component. Lastly, this scene keeps the human side of the story in focus and perpetually reminds the audience of the consequences of the battle's outcome. In nearly every frame, Anne is visible, stuck in the dead tree. The scene frequently cuts to close-up shots of her that emphasize how small and helpless she is in this titanic struggle. She isn't an idle spectator either. Midway through, Kong falls backward into the tree, toppling it over. This moment physically connects Anne to the conflict. Her presence lends this scene weight and attention. There are many contenders for the best monster fight ever, including the remake of this scene, but I don't think any of them blend the elements of dynamism, realism, characterization, strategy, and tension as succinctly as in the original King Kong's T-Rex fight. As a cherry on top, after breaking the Rex's jaw, Kong toys with its limp mouth, showing a curious animal mind. Thanks to the intervention of the T-Rex, Driscoll survives his encounter with Kong and resumes his pursuit, alone. He arrives at the aftermath of the battle. This is another wonderfully deep shot. In the foreground is Bruce Cabot on the live-action set. In the background is Kong lumbering away, and between them is the body of the Rex, swarmed by birds. Driscoll passes by the dinosaur's face, and in one of the most brutal details in the movie, we see that, despite its broken jaw oozing blood, it is still breathing. These gruesome moments serve an important purpose to the story beyond their shock value. They show the reality of Kong's life, that pain and death are part of the daily routine, and the only way to survive is to be the most brutal creature. This allows the audience to sympathize with Kong despite his violent actions, and shows how remarkable and unusual the tenderness he shows Anne is. Continuing the pursuit, there is an unfortunate continuity error. While traveling out of the clearing away from the ravine, Kong passes through an area previously shown to be between the ravine and the clearing. I do appreciate the minor touch of Kong pulling down an annoying vine. Another beautiful shot, a painting of Skull Mountain in the background, live action footage of a waterfall in front of it, Kong in front of the waterfall, and Bruce Cabot in the foreground. Kong arrives at a towering cave leading into the hollow core of Skull Mountain. It is an appropriate entryway for a king. Birds fly over Kong's head, and a stop-motion Driscoll climbs into view. Kong then enters one of the most complicated shots of the entire film. Around him is a gorgeous painting of the cavern that is simultaneously in front of and behind him. Directly ahead of him is a live-action pool of water, with something swimming inside. In front of the water is a stop-motion set. In front of this is a live-action miniature of a bubbling mud geyser. Finally, live-action steam has been printed onto the film. As if this isn't enough, another layer will be added momentarily to this shot in the form of projections of the actors. Believing he has found a safe place, Kong sets Anne on a ledge and turns his back to her. He is mistaken. A gargantuan serpent slithers from the pool toward Anne. She screams as it lunges at her, alerting Kong and initiating another battle. While inferior to the T-Rex fight, this scene still holds up as a worthy successor, mainly because it is radically different in choreography. Whereas the Tyrannosaur only presented one threat at a time, this new foe attacks Kong from two directions, the mouth and the tail. If Kong grabs the head, stopping it from biting him, he is left exposed to the strangling tail. If he tries to pry the tail from his throat, the head will be free to attack. This scene provides a new challenge for the animators. Up until now, all of Skull Island's inhabitants have either been extinct animals or fictional creations, giving O'Brien and his men leeway in animating their movements, because the audience doesn't know how a Stegosaurus or a Kong should move. But this thing closely resembles a present-day snake, meaning the audience will have an expectation for its behavior. The animators lived up to the challenge. It looks and moves like a real snake. As the creature climbs onto Kong's back, we see its full body and come to the startling realization that it isn't a snake but a plesiosaur. Regardless of the thing's true identity, it makes a fatal mistake when, after being thrown off Kong's body, it wraps its tail around his forearm in an attempt to regain its grip. Kong uses this to his advantage and, after beating the plesiosaur's head away, grabs it by the back fin with his other hand, swings the creature into the air, and slams it against the rocks. The orchestra's cymbals crash in correlation with the action, channeling Kong's power. Echoing the last fight, Kong messes with his foe's body before pounding his chest and declaring his victory. One of the most impressive and inconspicuous accomplishments of the animators is how skillfully they make the solid, stop-motion prop of the plesiosaur look limp and rubbery. Kong retrieves Anne in another slick transition from the live Fey Ray to the animated doll, and continues his search for a peaceful spot. Kong scares off a cluster of birds as he steps onto a ledge protruding from the side of Skull Mountain, where he has a view of the whole island. The backdrop of this scene is one of the best paintings in the film. The sheer face of the mountain looming behind, the thick forest of trees below, and the sun shining through the low stratus clouds onto the expansive ocean make for a gorgeous visual. Kong lays down on the ground and carefully surveys the ledge. It's sadly ironic that, to Kong, height means safety. He stands on the edge and pounds his chest while letting out his cry. This is Kong's finest moment. He is the triumphant king of his world. Everything afterward is his downfall. Anne's theme blends with Kong's, conveying her helplessness and his victory. Anne faints and Kong lifts her up, then sits down. This is our first and only time seeing him entirely at peace. This shot is one of the most technically impressive of the film. Already, the means by which the filmmakers have synchronized the live-action footage of Fay Wray and the giant ape hand with the stop-motion animation is clever. The stunning part of this scene is when Kong tears off part of Ann's dress, holds it in his hand, and sniffs it. The barrier between reality and illusion is shattered. Now that Kong has finally taken a break, I'll use this moment to talk about his design. This is by far my favorite Kong design because it impeccably balances his traits. He looks old, mean, and hardened, but when at rest, his face and posture take on a peaceful, melancholy appearance. He switches between walking on his knuckles and his hind legs frequently, and this alternation is handled perfectly. Most other portrayals of the character go one way or the other, full biped or full gorilla. The only movie that really tries to capture both is Godzilla vs. Kong, but the transition between poses isn't natural. It looks like two separate Kong designs are being used in the same movie. Part of this will be the fact that, in the original, Kong usually has a reason to stand upright. Sometimes it's to grab something or pound his chest, but usually it's because he's angry. The Monsterverse version seems to switch at random. I myself don't like the bipedal Kong. It makes him too much like an oversized Sasquatch. When O'Brien's Kong stands on his hind legs, it looks just awkward enough to be ape-like. To put all this simply, the original Kong's design is my favorite because he looks and moves like an actual gorilla while still appearing monstrous enough to be fantastical. Driscoll, nearly at the mouth of the cave, rests his weight on an unstable rock, alerting Kong. Now temporarily free, Anne begins crawling away. A pterosaur flies past in the background, foreshadowing an upcoming incident. Anne disappears behind a rock and reappears on the other side as a wonderfully animated model. Suddenly, the pterosaur from a few moments ago swoops in and grabs poor Anne in his claws. She really can't catch a break. The winged creature fumbles with its catch just long enough for Kong to return. I applaud the props department for manufacturing a pair of life-size pterosaur talons for the sole purpose of having two brief shots of Fay Wray being carried away by them. Movies aren't as fun as they used to be. Kong thwarts the oversized bird and oof! Anne is dropped to the ground. This fight is one-sided, and thus less interesting than the other two, but who cares? We got an extra dinosaur scene. Jack miraculously reunites with Anne, who quickly catches on to his plan. While Kong finishes off the pterosaur, Jack climbs down a vine dangling from the ledge, with Anne hanging onto his back. Aside from Jack's hairline suddenly receding, this is a wonderful, exciting stunt. Not to pick on the Peter Jackson remake, but its version of this scene uses so many green screen effects and quick edits that the athleticism of Driscoll climbing down an unstable vine with a grown woman on his back is lost. Looking into the background, you can see the wall and the anchored venture. I can't get past the amount of thought and care that went into the visual design of this film. In a genius moment of tension, Kong realizes Anne is gone, sees Driscoll escaping with her, then begins pulling the vine up. After how much Jack and Anne have gone through, it feels crushing to see their progress so easily undone. The look of determination on Kong's face and the dreadful sight of the two humans rising closer and closer to him spurs the viewer's imagination to picture what will happen when they reach the top, adding to the horror. As a last resort, Jack lets go and falls, with Anne, into the lake below. The cheesiness of the falling dummies is compensated by how close they come to hitting the rocks. In spite of all odds, Driscoll returns to the wall with Anne in his arms. Her theme plays as they cross the threshold. This piece of music that previously conveyed a sense of pitiful despair now carries a triumphant but exhausted energy. The characters regroup, and the film takes a breath. Then, Carl Denham asks this question.
Wait a minute, what about Kong?
Every scene of this character has been building to this moment. Audience has both heard about and seen his ambition and the lengths he will go to achieve it, but has never been let in on his thoughts since seeing Kong. Now, he's finally revealed his new plan, to capture the beast by using Anne as bait. It's a crazy idea, and everyone is against it. This is the biggest conflict these characters have with each other. It's interesting that this scene, which is less than a minute long, would essentially become the entire basis for Denham's characterization in both remakes. And yes, I know the guy in the 1976 version isn't Carl Denham, but he plays the same role. I've always wondered what Denham would have done, but we'll never know because the lookout spots Kong. The state of peace is shattered by Anne's scream as the sailors and the orchestra's musicians break into a frenzy. The gate is closed and locked as the lookout rings the gong, and come on! That's the best take they had? It looked perfectly believable when the Islanders were ringing it. It speaks to my love of this movie that this shot is one of my biggest problems with it. Hearing the gong, the islanders scramble out of their huts, and we get a nice moment where the sailors and the islanders briefly join forces under the leadership of Captain Englehorn to keep the gates shut. Despite the mob of able-bodied men and the massive wood beam, Kong breaks through. This scene foreshadows the ultimate resolution to the story. Kong cannot be stopped until he or his enemies are dead. There is no alternative. I suppose this makes him rather like Denim. Until the wall was broken, there was a semblance of order and coordination among the humans, but now that their defenses have been breached, everything has erupted into chaos. Kong plunges into a total rampage. There is no deliberation, no strategy, just a furious desire to destroy everything in sight. Denim seems to be the only one who's kept his head, trying to get to the gas bombs. There is a great variety of action to this sequence. Buildings are demolished, people are mangled, rubble is tossed from the animated Kong in the background to live actors in the foreground. The life-size Kong head is put to good use as he bites islanders to death. Complementing this is a life-size foot that crushes poor souls into the mud. One of the best moments from this sequence is when Kong engages a troop of spearmen. Spears are tossed from the real actors into the stop-motion model. Kong tears a large branch from a fallen tree and clubs one of the men before tossing the weapon onto some unfortunate islanders in the foreground. He picks up the fallen man and bites him to death. Several more well-placed but futile spears provoke him into pummeling the platform, toppling the rest of the fighters to the ground. After tearing through the village, Kong arrives at the beach, where the sailors have grouped by their rafts. He bellows and beats his chest, giving Denim enough time to lob a gas bomb at him. Kong's reaction is pitiful. He rubs his eyes and clutches at his throat, baffled as to how his strength was so quickly sapped. Kong has suffered his first defeat at the hands of some tiny humans because he refused to let Anne go. Denham has successfully transported Kong to New York and secured a show on Broadway. After hearing Max Steiner's catchy King Kong march, we're reintroduced to the main characters. Denham steps on stage and delivers one of his many great speeches, then motions for the curtain to be drawn. We've seen so much of Kong by now, it really shouldn't be all that remarkable when he debuts on Broadway, but it is. Maybe it's the fanfare, or the audience's reaction, or seeing Kong in the familiar world, or just the platform he's on. Kong doesn't show any aggression, even when Anne walks in front of him, with Jack by her side. He only seems curious. When the newsmen begin photographing the four, however, he goes into a fury, believing Anne to be under attack. What's interesting is that, unlike Minnie, an oversized movie monster, Kong has a clearly defined motivation. Anne. Every last choice he makes is because of her. In his fit of rage, Kong forgets his chains are chrome steel and breaks loose. The audience erupts into mindless pandemonium, as people do. It's somewhat humorous, since, if they had remained seated, they probably would have been safe, as Kong follows Anne through a back exit. He smashes through a wall into the city street. Although we have left Skull Island, the marvelous attention to detail remains. Just look at that fire escape they put on the miniature building for this one shot. Jack and Anne flee into a nearby hotel, and Kong pursues. We see many similar sights to the village rampage. People chewed to death, structures crushed, debris tossed on the heads of bystanders. The civilized world has not changed Kong. The reverse has come true. He has turned New York into Skull Island. A woman in a window above, likely having the most confusing moment of her life, screams upon seeing Kong, catching his attention and luring him upward. It's so neat seeing Kong adapt his abilities to the new terrain of the concrete jungle. As he scales the hotel, an open window catches his attention. Inside is a woman in bed. What follows is one of the film's most shocking moments, especially at its initial release. Believing the woman to be Anne, Kong reaches his paw through the window to grab her. Take note that the props department has added a shackle around the wrist of the life-size Kong hand. Kong pulls the woman outside, upside down, as if it's not embarrassing enough for her to be caught in her pajamas. He eyes her, then, realizing she's the wrong woman, drops her to the ground. This moment is fascinating beyond its initial shock. It shows the limits of Kong's mind, that he is still an animal and incapable of understanding the consequences of his actions. More intriguing, we see that Anne is special to him. No other woman will do. In what is admittedly one of the more contrived parts of this movie, Kong finds the room Jack and Anne are staying in. I do appreciate the irony of Jack's words of comfort juxtaposed with the ape's face right behind him. Before reclaiming Anne, Kong looks at the crowded street below as a particularly melancholic rendition of Anne's theme plays. Perhaps I'm reading too deeply, but this always struck me as Kong, on his own primitive level, seeing the world scorn him for his actions. and spitting back in the world's eye. Kong's arm smashes through the window into the room. Driscoll, always a worthy man, grabs the chair and fights back, but is no match. Only death will stop Kong from getting what he wants. There is no compromising. As you've no doubt noticed by now, Kong's fur can be seen shifting whenever the animators had to grab the model in order to pose it for the next frame. But this time, it actually has a benefit. It creates the appearance of wind blowing through his fur. This also applies to the climactic Empire State scene. After spending the majority of the film on Skull Island, it is surreal to see Kong among the buildings of New York. What once was a familiar, recognizable location is now an otherworldly dreamscape. Kong's situation is quite sad when you think about it. All he's trying to do now is find a safe place in a hostile alien land. Kong's search leads him to an elevated railroad track. A mob of fleeing civilians makes way for him. People in a nearby window look out in awe. A passing train agitates Kong, causing him to assault the track. He spots another approaching. The music takes up a rhythm similar to the sound of a chugging train car. Kong uses his shoulders to break apart the track. His theme plays deeply over the train's rhythm, foreshadowing the vehicle's fate. We get an ironic shot of the passengers on board, totally oblivious to the nightmare they are about to enter. This is followed by an almost point-of-view shot from the conductor's perspective. His reaction time is quite slow, probably because he couldn't figure out what he was seeing. He slams the brakes, but it is too late. The train crashes, and all hell breaks loose. Actually, this whole scene is quite similar to the train attack in the original Godzilla. Both scenes utilize nearly the same camera angles and editing. Makes me wonder if this was a tribute. The sequence concludes with Kong pounding the side of the train car as stop-motion passengers drop from one of the windows. Deciding this new foe has been defeated, Kong makes an angry gesture and climbs up the side of a nearby building. We're told over the radio that Kong is climbing the Empire State Building, no doubt for the same reason he scaled to the top of Skull Mountain. Listening with us are Driscoll, Denham, and a rather incompetent policeman. Because Driscoll is the bane of Kong's existence, he has the idea to send out airplanes. It is comical that he thought of this before the authorities, but I do like that he is still leading the fight against Kong. This is probably the greatest shot not to feature any fantastical elements. The four planes rolling across the runway with the dark mass of skyscrapers looming behind them conveys the idea that an epic battle is near at hand. The slow, uneasy variation of the Kong theme adds menace to these machines. Here's a great visual, but what happened to Anne? This is even worse than the shot with the gong. The film compensates for the continuity error with this long shot of Kong scaling to the top of the tower as the planes approach behind. The music builds, rising, preparing us for a conflict of legendary proportions. I can't overstate how cool it is that the filmmakers were able to use real biplanes for this scene. The 2005 version did an admirable job with its computer-rendered planes, but it's just not the same. With the clash of symbols, this shot is introduced. It would be a waste of words trying to describe it. By the way, the pilot in this shot is Marion Cooper, and the gunner is Ernest Schoedsack. It's a great cameo made better by the fact that Cooper really was a pilot. Kong takes a long look at Anne. We see Cooper motion for Schoedsack to hold his fire. The great irony of this scene is both sides are trying to protect Anne, and if Kong hadn't set her down, there would be no danger. This is totally lost in the remake, where the pilots seem entirely unconcerned whether Anne survives the fight or not. Kong sets Anne down, climbs into position, and bellows a challenge to the biplanes. A powerful, almost militaristic variation on Anne's theme plays. She is the reason this battle is being fought. Then, the orchestra vanishes. Just like the T-Rex fight, it will not return until one side is lost. The absence of music here has the same impact as it did then. The choreography of this fight is simple. A plane races toward Kong, its engine blaring. Kong returns the cry, arms raised to fight. Plane closes in, there is the roar of machine gun fire. Then it turns and flies past Kong. They never touched, but he's now injured. There are three main reasons why this is one of the saddest monster death scenes of all time. First, it's unfair. Kong has all the strength and intelligence needed to win against any creature. But this is not a struggle decided by power or even intellect, but technology. All of Kong's abilities are useless. It's comparable to putting a medieval knight on Omaha Beach. Second is Kong's reaction to this unfairness. He looks totally confused. He has no way of understanding why he is losing. The way his movements slow down as he becomes weaker is pitiful. Third, and most of all, Kong believes he is protecting Anne when, in reality, he has been the villain of this story. He can be seen frequently looking down at Anne between strafes, making sure she's alright. Kong isn't totally helpless. He manages to bring down one of the planes, but it's too late to make a difference. We see him rubbing his eyes to stay awake, calling back to his reaction to the gas bomb. Kong's strength finally fails him, and he slips from his perch. The music returns, signaling that the fight is over. Kong reaches for Anne, then stops himself and looks back at the biplanes, ensuring they won't turn around for another attack. He picks up Anne one last time, cradles her affectionately, puts her down and strokes her. The roar of the biplane's engine returns as one rebalances for another strike on Kong. This finishes him. Almost operatically, he holds onto the tower with an outstretched arm before falling off. It's tragically fitting that Kong met his end not in his last moment of tenderness, but while continuing his fight with the biplanes. He was a violent creature who died a violent death. As much skill as computer animation takes, and as gorgeous as the results can be, I will always prefer physical art. There's something inherently beautiful about an artistic work crafted out of real materials that has a tangible presence in the world. King Kong is a wonderful display of physical art. Painting, model construction, and animation, both hand-drawn and stop-motion, featured throughout. A CG model or an actor in a costume can produce some incredible visuals, but stop-motion will always be my favorite method of portraying monsters on screen. The animator having to deliberately pose the models for every frame adds so much character and personality to the outcome. The beauty of the special effects of King Kong makes them not just impressive accomplishments for their time, but pieces of art that are still inspirational today. Their masterful artistry underscores the deeper ideas within the film's story, ideas that I'll analyze in the next and final part of this video series. Stick around.